Hi, and thank you so much for popping by. My name is Bita Pobaluzwi. Feel free to call me Bui. In the next coming clips, I will be looking at the State of the Nation address that President Dumaboko made early this week, analyzing what the president said and some of the nuances that I picked up in his speech. Comparison to the SONA in 2018 and 2023, the SONA in 2024 had a very new theme in it. And this theme has to do with this idea of government engaging in or starting and establishing medical cannabis trade and industrial hemp. The president talked about this birth of a new industry. So in Malawi, the state of use of cannabis, cannabis is legalized officially for industrial use, medical use, growing, selling, and exporting of cannabis, but recreational use is prohibited. In Zambia, legalized officially for export and medicinal purposes, while recreational use is also prohibited. In South Africa, medical and recreational use of cannabis are legal officially. So South Africa is the only place where these two are going hand in hand. Zimbabwe, legalized officially for medical use and not recreational use. In Lesotho, legalized officially for medical use, growing, selling, and exporting of cannabis, but recreational use is prohibited. In Ghana, it's prohibited for recreational use, but legal for medical and industrial purposes. In Morocco, prohibited for recreational use, but legal for medical and industrial purposes, and it's unofficial yet. They have that in brackets there. In Rwanda, legalized medical cannabis for export and medical use. In Uganda, legalized solely for exports. So in the Southern African region, it would seem that Botswana and Namibia are the two countries that are still a little bit left behind when it comes to medicinal cannabis and industrial hemp, right? So in Zambia, for example, I'm reading here that they have the Cannabis Act for 2021 and the Industrial Hemp Act for 2021. Now, the enactment of these acts follows a 2019 cabinet decision in Zambia to permit the production and export of cannabis for medicinal and export purposes. This reform was reportedly driven by the need to boost foreign exchange sources. According to one source, Zambia's motivation is rooted in a hefty fiscal deficit and growing debt burden. In the Cannabis Act in Zambia, the act permits a person to engage in what is called licensed activity. This is the cultivation, manufacture, production, storage, distribution, import, and export of cannabis for medicinal, scientific, or research purposes. So there's a very contextual reason for enacting these acts. In the same way, the Industrial Hemp Act in Zambia, this act permits a person to engage in licensed activities, the growing, processing, distribution, buying, export, and conducting of research on industrial hemp. So there's a lot of context. And for recreational use of cannabis in Zambia remains an offense. Only South Africa really is the one where you can use it medically and you can use it recreationally. Both are legal in that context. Other countries are still only pushing for the legalization of it in terms of medical use and industrial use, but not for recreational use, right? So a study that was conducted in 2022 titled Medical Use of Cannabis in Africa, the Pharmacist's Perspective, notes that cannabis is indigenous to many African countries. But despite this, the legalization of cannabis for industrial, medical, and economic purposes is not uniform within the African region. However, there is a growing interest in cannabis use for medical purposes in Africa, and pharmacists are best equipped to provide clinical advice and oversight in the safe management, production, and dispensing of medical cannabis on the African continent. In essence, I think what this information is showing from this study is that there's the economic benefit, which is pushing for the legalization of the use of cannabis, particularly for industrial use, medical use, and exporting of cannabis, because as these studies are showing, cannabis is actually very indigenous to most of the African nations. So they are saying we are using this plant, which comes naturally in our communities. We are now using it for economic benefit. There seems to be a gap even in research in the African context on the use benefits of or the risks of cannabis, right? So it says here, the research interest of drug policy researchers in African countries needs to shift in order to bridge the knowledge gaps and the opportunities, the benefits, the risks associated with medicinal cannabis, right? So yeah, it's this is all looking like an opportunity, a missed opportunity for African countries, including Botswana. So alcohol is by far the most major substance of abuse. And then while cannabis is still the most common illicit drug used, especially amongst the youth. So there is a public health aspect to why it is not being legalized recreationally. And I think this is one of the key differences between the 2018, 2023, and 2024 State of Nation addresses. The question is, why was the previous administration so against this move? Alrighty, my friend, thank you so much for popping by. I hope you're having a lovely day where you are, but most importantly, I hope you're having a healthy day wherever you're watching me from. Bye.